withdrawal from Vietnam.
And so a phased withdrawal proceeds. Australia takes home her task force while American combat troops pull out from provinces up and down the country. Does this mean then that the war is really over? Nearly over? Or simply grinding on under a new label called Vietnamization? One Australian who's been an expert observer in Vietnam for nearly a decade, the man who led Australia's first military commitment to Vietnam back...
They're going home and they're happy. Australia's 3rd Battalion withdraws from the Task Force base camp among the rubber trees at Nui Dat. They thought they'd be here for 12 months. Now they head home after only 7, because the Australian government has decreed that most of its troops will be home by Christmas. The battalion's casualties for this tour of duty: 3 killed in action and 38 wounded.
When you go back, do you think you'll be still interested in Vietnam, or will you just forget all about it?
Read the papers about it, I suppose, see what's happening in the place. That's about it.
Oh, I'm very curious to find out what happens when we go home. That's about it.
And what will you feel about Vietnam when you get back to Australia?
Oh, just good memories, I suppose. But I'll still have an interest in what's going on over here. Haven't spent in 7 months for nothing, I'm afraid.
Australia's 6 years of combat duty in Vietnam will soon become history. What seems to matter most at the moment is getting the troops home to Australia by Christmas.
346! 349!
The withdrawal announcement is seen by some as a decision based as much on domestic politics in Australia as on military realities here in Phuoc Tuy Province, Vietnam.
I'll be home for Christmas. You can plan on me.
Anchored off Vung Tau, the Australian troop carrier, HMAS Sydney. She's come to be called the Vung Tau Ferry, and this morning she's taking aboard trucks as well as troops. Stringent quarantine regulations cover this part of the withdrawal. Vehicles have had to be steam cleaned to clear them of tropical mud. Then they've been chemically treated before being cleared to re-enter Australia. The cost of Australia's involvement in Vietnam for a full year was officially quoted as just over $44 million for the year ending last February. Shipment home of stores and equipment will go on into the early months of next year. For the troops, a parting glimpse of Vietnam. Then their first glimpse of home, an Australian ship called the Sydney. In 6 years of combat duty, nearly 500 Australians have been killed in Vietnam. About 200 of them were national servicemen, conscripted into the army. Well over 2,000 Australians have been wounded in action in Vietnam. battalion's commander, Colonel Scott, seemed surprised at the speed of his battalion's withdrawal.
Colonel Scott, the men are coming on board, the equipment's coming on board. What's it like to be pulling out of Vietnam today?
Well, I don't quite know what to express it as, because we've been on operations right up until the last moment, and it's been such a very quick decision and quick move as far as we're concerned that it's really nearly unbelievable that we finally are on the ship. And even just flying in this morning, you know, it was just hard to realise that it's all over.
What sort of a morale problem did the decision to leave before the natural end of your tour of duty create?
Well, there's a natural tendency, of course, for people to start thinking about going home. And I believe that probably it was the hardest time of the tour, because people, unless you kept them on the ball and the full realisation that the enemy was still about, and he is still about, that you could have unnecessary casualties or even have accidents, which was the biggest single factor that I had to ensure, that by sufficient and more supervision perhaps than usual, that to my mind the last 6 weeks have been the most important of the whole tour.
One final point, is it conceivable that VC could be watching this withdrawal operation today from the mountains around here?
Oh, I don't doubt that for one moment. I think he's got his observation posts throughout the province, and although he may not be able to know exactly what's happening, he's got a fair idea.
But as Australia's task force withdraws, how secure is the province it leaves behind? How real is the danger of greater enemy activity once the Australians have sailed for home? Not far away is Long Son Island, from which the Viet Cong fired rockets into Vung Tau on election day. The marketplace at Baria, crammed each morning with the people Australian troops were sent here to defend.